It is difficult to imagine the Philippine educational landscape without the private schools. The private schools help the state fulfill its mandate of making quality education accessible to all Filipinos. It is in recognition of this role that the Fund for Assistance to Private Education, a permanent trust fund for private education, was established through Executive Order 156 on November 5, 1968. The Private Education Assistance Committee, or the PEAC, was created as the trustee of the fund. The PEAC is composed of the Secretary of Education as the ex officio chair and a representative each from the National Economic Development Authority, Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines, Philippine Association of Colleges and Universities, and Association of Christian Schools, Colleges, and Universities. For the development of private education, the PEAC takes on the role of funder, advocate, partner, and enabler. A national secretariat headed by an executive director executes the policies, programs, and initiatives of the PEAC for private education. In 1989, a landmark piece of legislation, RA 6728, or the Government Assistance to Students and Teachers in Private Education, or GASPE, was passed. The GASPE Act, which was amended by RA 8545 in 1998, institutionalized government assistance to private education in the country. The Educational Service Contracting, or ESC, Teacher Salary Subsidy, or TSS, Senior High School Voucher Program, the In-Service Training, or INSET, and Research are part of the Department of Education's GASPE program. The PEAC implements the GASPE program given the track record of the PEAC in program management. The PEAC has been involved in the development of the ESC, from piloting a scheme, which was a precursor to the ESC in 1982 to 1986, to implementing the ESC in 1986 to 1991, and from 1996 up to the present. The ESC today has close to 1 million beneficiaries. Part of the PEAC infrastructure for the GASPE program is the Regional Secretariat. The PEAC-RS is headed by the Regional Program Director, who designates a Regional Program Coordinator for the day-to-day program implementation in the region. The PEAC has the following responsibilities in the GASPE program: orientation, ESC certification, SHS voucher applications, processing, monitoring, resolving cases of schools with adverse findings, regular meetings and consultations with stakeholders, research and data gathering, in-service training. The PEAC is also accredited as a local continuing professional development, or CPD, provider by the Professional Regulation Commission, or PRC. Participants of the INSET programs offered by the PEAC have the opportunity to earn the required CPD units for the renewal of their professional licenses. From 2012 to 2017, the PEAC trained a total of more than 70,000 junior high school teachers, and since 2016, an estimated 17,000 SHS teachers. The PEAC also implements its own programs of assistance. The Assistance to Programs and Initiatives to Reform Education, or ASPIRE, gave funding support in the amount of 33.7 million to 99 projects of private educational associations since 2015 to 2016. The Research for School Improvement Towards Excellence has assisted 79 private school administrators and teachers writing their theses and dissertation since 2015 to 2016. The Dissemination Assistance to Research and Education, or DARE, has supported 16 faculty members who presented their papers in international conferences abroad since it was launched in 2016 to 2017. The Philippine Education Research Journal is an online resource for decision makers, policymakers, and practitioners in education. Its editorial board consists of highly respected educators and researchers. The Philippine Education Conference is an opportunity for school administrators and teachers to learn from educational leaders and experts here and abroad as they discuss educational issues, concerns, trends, and innovations. Recognizing the inherent strengths of the private schools in achieving excellence in Philippine education, the PEAC is committed to promoting private education as an integral part of our educational system.
Good morning to everyone. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Ito po si Doris Ferrer, Executive Director of the Private Education Assistance Committee. In a few days from today, many private schools will start school year 2020-21. However, some are actually starting today, while some have already started. I am certain this school year is one of the most, if not the most challenging and difficult school year we shall ever navigate. But we at PEAC believe in leadership, innovation, dynamism, and educational reforms, with or without a pandemic. And this is what this series is all about. LIDER is PEAC's educational leadership series, designed to unsettle and disturb, move and compel, awaken and inspire all of us. We start today with a session on future-proofing schools, and who can best share with us than Dr. Reynaldo Banzon Vea. Dr. Vea is currently the President and CEO of the Mapua University and its subsidiaries, Malayan Colleges Laguna, Malayan Colleges Mindanao, and Malayan High School of Science. He is also the President of iPeople, which has as subsidiaries the University of Nueva Cáceres, National Teachers College, and the APEC schools. He is currently the chairperson of the Philippine Qualifications Framework National Referencing Committee that successfully referenced the PQF against the ASEAN Qualifications Reference Framework last year. He is also the chairperson of the CHED Technical Working Group that is implementing a project on the comparative analysis of New Zealand and Philippine bachelor's degrees, together with the New Zealand Qualifications Authority. Dr. Vea is presently the chairperson of the Engineering Sciences and Technology Division of the National Academy of Science and Technology. He also recently served as a director of the Philippine Fulbright Commission and is the immediate past chairperson of the Science and Technology Committee of the UNESCO National Commission for the Philippines. Dr. Vea was formerly Dean of the UP College of Engineering. He has a PhD in engineering from the University of California at Berkeley, an SM in Naval Architecture and Marine Engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and a BS in Mechanical Engineering, magna cum laude, from the University of the Philippines. And what is this session all about? In the words of Dr. Vea, it will revolve around interconnectedness and connectivity in the future, and what schools should do to prepare themselves for this. Interconnectedness involves heightened global mobility, despite the hiccup occasioned by COVID. Schools should adopt outcomes-based education, since outcomes is a common language in education and the professions. It is the language of qualifications frameworks, mutual recognition agreements, and international accreditation. On the other hand, connectivity involves the greater role of the internet in education. Schools should appreciate the key ideas about online education and recognize the challenges and opportunities for the country, the schools in the Philippines, and our students. We are in for an exciting session, my dear friends. So may I now call, without further ado, he was here since I started with my good morning, Dr. Ray Banzon Vea.
Thank you very much, Doris, and good morning. and good morning to everyone who are attending this morning's session. I will now share my screen. Okay, so my topic is leading change, future-proofing schools. The first thing I'd like to do is take a very long view of the development of universities. As you may know, the university concept was first implemented sometime back in the 11th century in Italy, specifically in Bologna, which now also bears the name of a famous document in engineering and other professional fields called the Bologna Declaration. So 1088 was when it started, after this coming from the ecclesiastical system of education of the past. And the hallmark of a medieval university would be that it is a community of masters and scholars. They studied truths in the natural order, knowledge for the sake of itself, generalist knowledge. So it was really an ivory tower. But then it innovated what was in the past, and they came up with features of a university that we see even now. So schools had a name, they had a central location, a system of lectures, a procedure for examinations and degrees, and an administrative structure for faculty. This model of a university held sway for several centuries, but it was in the 19th century that it was supplanted by the modern university, where instead of truths in the natural order, they were after useful knowledge. And they were not in an ivory tower, they were inside the general social fabric or the general fabric of society. They had departments, meaning to say there were specializations and institutes. They had research libraries. They catered to the needs of society instead of just the individual students. They went for the discovery of the new. They solved problems, and they were training men at a really high level. They had graduate schools of arts and sciences, solidly professional schools, and they had certain research institutes. But what brought this about, you may ask? Actually, this was brought on by Industrial Revolution 1.0 and Industrial Revolution 2.0. Industrial Revolution 1.0 being occasioned by the invention of the steam engine. So instead of using the labor of men and animals in the production of goods, a steam engine was deployed. There was one central shaft that was made to turn by the steam engine, and pulleys and cords were attached to the central shaft to power other machines. With that, the mass production to a certain extent became possible. And then you needed trained men and women to run the shop floor and to improve the steam engine and other machines that were attached to it. But Industrial Revolution 2.0 brought about the electric motor, and now you had electrical engineering. And using electromagnetic force, machines were built, and it gave the freedom of laying out the shop floor in a different configuration than that when the steam engine was used. So you needed more expertise in this particular area. In addition, industrial chemistry was coming to the fore in Germany. The company Bayer, in fact, became existent at that time. and they needed chemists and highly trained professional men and women. Thus, I think what came to the fore was the need for universities and schools to be in the service of industry at the very least, no? So useful knowledge also came to the fore. So this brought about the birth of the modern university. But what followed the modern university was what the former University of California President Kerr called the multiversity. This came about in the early 20th century. What distinguished it from the modern university of the 19th century was that there were more functions other than instruction and research. Universities started extension services, consulting services, and up to the present, we have testing services, technology business incubators of late, no? Technology, licensing, continuing education, high school, and competitive sports. So there was an accretion of functions. From the basic instruction and research function were added a multitude of other functions for universities. Thus, it was famously described as a multiversity. But now we're seeing fully online schools in the 21st century. It deviated now from the previous models in that there's no central physical campus. There are distributed learning centers, a small central office, very huge enrollment, a system of coaches aside from faculty members. And now, in recognition of this, even engineering and IT programs can be accredited by the ABET, the sole accrediting body allowed to accredit engineering programs and IT programs in the US. And they'll be accredited under the same criteria as those used for face-to-face. So fully online schools is gaining traction as a model for universities and colleges. So as you can see, the evolution of schools takes centuries. And you may wonder, how certain schools have been able to make themselves proof against future, even long-term, in a long-term way. A school like Harvard, established in 1636, was able to go through all these stages. And even up to now, as you may know, it has very strong programs, not only in the social sciences, but even in the natural sciences and in business. But we did not stray very far. We have a school in the Philippines that's more than 400 years old. Everybody knows what this is. It's the school that has been continuously operating since its foundation in 1611. I refer, of course, to the University of Santo Tomas. So, how can they achieve something like that kind of longevity? I would believe that it is their adaptability to change. Might be very interesting to see how UST has changed over the centuries. And in fact, since it's a pontifical university, might be pretty sure that it is also very much affected by happenings elsewhere in the globe, particularly in Europe. And so it stands now, I think, as a testament to the ability of the school, ability of schools to withstand, if I may say so, the future, and then adapt to it. No? In fact, UST, I think, is one of the first schools to adopt a learning management system in a big way in our country. So that would be a good case study for future proofing of schools, or maybe of future shaping of the country. Okay. Now for fully online schools, we may mention in the US, but there are examples in Europe as well. The Arizona State University has quite a big component of an online school and very successful at that with an enrollment of 30,000 students. The University of New Hampshire also has an online school and also very successful. Purdue University as well has an online school, no? But the first to do this in a very big way was the University of Phoenix, although it ran into some issues, but it had a very, very big enrollment, the biggest university, in fact, at one point. So there are models now for fully online schools, and I mentioned only a few. Okay. Well, to avoid future shock, with apologies to the futurist Alvin Toffler, I think the major things that the school can do is to keep attuned to the times, to arrive at the future at the time that the future happens. Well, in the case, I think, of Mapua, let me just mention our own evolution in this regard. So Mapua was established in 1925, the civil engineering and architecture program to start with. And as the years and decades went by, it added more and more engineering programs. It's among the first to establish computer engineering program, first to establish bioengineering, probably still the only school with a bioengineering program, first mainframe computer in the 1960s among private schools. We started testing services in the 60s, continuing education in the 80s, extension services in the 90s, research in the 90s. We started with 2 Scopus papers published by faculty members in 1996, I think. And now, last year, we published over 300 Scopus index papers. So there was an exponential growth in the past decades. We started consultancy services in the 2000s, patenting services in 2011, and we had our first patent application just 2 years ago in 2018. So we're pretty much a multiversity, if you may want to say that. In fact, just 5 years after we were founded, we already helped found the NCAA. We already had a basketball team. And the high school was also established around that time. So I think we pretty much follow that model, and I would think that many schools in the Philippines would be along the mold of multiversities as well. But I think that aside from keeping attuned to the times, if you can hack it, if you can do it, what would be a better thing to do would be to help define or invent the future. But that will really take some doing. And we know that the best schools in the world are able to do this. Certainly, MIT can do this. It's said that if their companies formed by their alumni are put together as one country, it would have the 6th highest GDP among all countries in the world. So they've been able to innovate and lead and shape the future. That would be the best way to do it if we can. Other than that, we just have to keep pace with the major trends and developments in the world and nationally. Okay. So schools around the world, not just us. If you read if you search the web, if you surf, you'll find that they were just as shocked by COVID-19 as we have been. And but of course, when we say we're shocked, COVID-19 was not pretty much our idea of the future. But Bill Gates might disagree with us because he already predicted a future of pandemics, urging all people to prepare for such an eventuality, and not many people listen. But this is not this may be part of our future, but this is not what we may want to refer to as the future that we invention. So we actually scrambled to pivot to fully online and realized that this mode is really no longer the future, as it might have seemed just 10 years ago, but already the present, but it is already the present, and if left us with a feeling that we may have arrived at the future a bit late. Almost all the ingredients for a rich educational experience, superior in some respects and inferior in others to face, are already existent, and we need only be able to put all of them together. So that's my view of what happened to us. But now let me go back to the past, and I hope you will forgive me for being quite self-indulgent because I will delve into the particular experience, or I will share the experience of Mapua. I do not want to just lecture people on what to do, but maybe by sharing, you'll pick up a few points or maybe reject some and learn something in the process. Okay, so in the 1990s, for 4 years, I headed the UP College of Engineering, and already, in my view, I think the stirrings of the global and digital world were already felt in the 1990s. If you may recall, the buzzwords then was globalization, world class, IT, World Wide Web. This was on everybody's mouth, or even tiger economy. And when I went once to the library, I saw a newspaper, and there was an ad from a Malaysian university recruiting faculty members with a very, very attractive package. I had the mind to keep the newspaper, but I refrained from doing so, thinking that we were not like that. We were not that. What we had to do instead was to be able to compete with what universities in other countries are able to offer faculty members. In the Philippine Science High School, the National University of Singapore in the 90s was recruiting graduates into their various faculties. And then universities at that time were forming alliances like Universitas 21, now U21, in order to get research funding for themselves in competition with other alliances and with other schools. So it was not lost on me that even that early, there was already competition for faculty members, for students, and for research funding. And it was global, it was regional, and it was real. And also, it was during that time that the JICA often visited me, and in the process of building the ASEAN University Network. And as we know, this network has persisted, and although it has not grown because it is rather exclusive, but it has transformed itself or reinvented itself and is now the AUN QA. But building of networks was in vogue at that time. There was another network called SIUNET, that's European Southeast Asian Alliance University Network. This was being pushed by the European Commission. So everybody wanted part of Southeast Asia, the Japanese and the Europeans. And that was an indication of the trend towards the globalization, also in the field of education. And also I was being invited to the meetings of the HR committees of APEC, the Asian Pacific Economic Community. And they were starting to put together organizations of engineers and other professionals. And this was for reasons of encouraging mobility. As some of you may know, this idea actually bore fruit, and we now have what is known as the APEC Registry of Engineers. It's a registry of individual engineers. If you become part of this registry, it increases your chances of being able to practice in other countries in the APEC community. It is now the Philippine representative is the Philippine Technological Council. The same is the umbrella organization of engineering societies, and it also runs the ACBET, the accreditation body, which is a member of the Washington Accord. So, yes, 1990s, it was pretty much evident. Globalization was pretty much evident already. Now, how about the digital world? Of course, we have dial-up internet. If I guess most of you still remember how the sound that dial-up makes on your on your computer. And we had a Mosaic browser, very elementary browsers. And we had email already. At one point, we were asking, what do we need email for? We can just go over to the other rooms and converse with our colleagues. But it took off. Email took off, including a file transfer protocol, so you can actually share files over email, no? And actually, for myself, I could not be more thankful that these were already available at that time. Because when I was at MWSS, I had an interlude there. They would not have believed me that 1997 was an El Nino year if we had not been able to search the NASA website and show the temperature distribution in the Pacific Ocean and the growing mass of warm water over the Pacific Ocean. So even when the rains still rains were falling, you could have told that there would be El Nino, and that's without the World Wide Web. That's something we could not have done. Well, this is just an aside. I'm sorry. Now, for education, we had education and training materials in compact disc or CD, and we had faculty experimentation with very rudimentary graphics for purposes of classroom instruction. So global and digital was pretty much evident in the 90s. So I transferred to Mapua in January 2020. And that was the thinking in my head, that if the future were global and digital, that is where Mapua should be headed. And so these are basically the things that we've done over 2 decades. The first thing we did was put up a gigabit network. And then, well, that was pioneering in a way, here in our country. So we put up this very high performance, high capacity network. And from a handful of computers that you can count with your fingers, we suddenly had almost 2,000 computers in short order. Then we established within 6 months a computer science and information technology degree programs. And then we adhered to the United Nations Millennium Development Goals, which later became Sustainable Development Goals. And we felt that this was part of going global. And then in 2006, we we moved for ABET accreditation, and ABET accreditation actually led us into outcomes-based education. Since ABET accreditation is outcomes-based accreditation, we thought we should have a suitably, consistent education system as well. We should be outcomes-based. And we have defined for ourselves a lofty vision, but not too lofty that you cannot measure the level of attainment. So we had a metric to measure the degree of its realization. Then we went for internationalization of research, internationalization of education, and sometime 2011, we went for adoption or a commitment to online education. Maybe I can go over each one. So we did a gigabit network. So for a school to be digital, it should not only be in the field of instruction and research, but even in administration. So we did in-house a student management system, registration, grade submission, etc. In the early days, we encountered some resistance among our faculty members in grade submission. So what I did, I asked one of the senior faculty members to learn the system of grade submission. And I had our IT office put large buttons in the graphic interface. And so we pointed to him as an example. If this guy is not scared of computer applications such as grade submission, then who should be? So it came to a point that when we shifted to the quarter system, we had to have everything done, grades submitted and enrolled within a week. So you cannot dilly-dally in submission of grades. And the only way to do that was by computer. So we could not have gone into the quarter system if we had not been able to do grade submission, registration, payment within a week's time in between quarters. So it really helped us when we moved to computerization of the administration system. So email and file transfer, both for administrative and academic, and we had the World Wide Web for basically at that time for browsing for educational content. So the students would be asked to do some research on the web, and they were able to do that. But really not much else. And then we put up the Mapua website, just as everyone, I think, was very proud to have a URL at www.etc. So these were what we were able to do early on. And then our CS and IT programs, we had them ABET and PTC ACBET accredited eventually. And we have special tracks supported by various partners, some of them still with us: Microsoft, Cisco, HP, Oracle, NetSuite, Huawei, SAP, SAS, Comp, and the latest would be CompTIA and Sophos for our cybersecurity program. They provide us with the laboratories and the experts for these programs. We also now have our first Masters in Business Analytics, first in the country, Masters in Business Analytics, and we have PhD in Computer Science by research. So over 20 years, it has really grown to where it is now. Now, what is the lesson here? When we get ourselves accredited, of course, we have to renew accreditation every so often. And it is a guard against obsolescence in curricula and other systems. Because if you know that you're going to be internationally accredited every few years or so, you have to maintain the currency of your curriculum, the currency of your systems, all the other criteria, the currency of your declared program outcomes, and so on. So accreditation is a vehicle for proofing against the future, I would think. Then the close partnership with companies is the same. So if you're in close touch with these companies, you cannot help but be current. No? It rubs off on you that what the latest they have, you're able to learn. The same with research. If you had to do research and do a literature survey, then you have to take it to the point where you've read everything and that there's nothing more that is new that you have to read or you have to learn. So it really brings you to the frontier, to the envelope of knowledge. And if that were the case, then that gives you a certain measure of being not becoming obsolescent in your or obsolete in your curricula. So graduate research helps keeps our programs current, and if you're able to come up with a great idea in research, if you're able to integrate a lot of results of the past and come up with a good summation that might be applied, or that may be developed into a useful system, process, or product, then you may even help to shape the future. So, well, we just think that the existence of our computer science and IT programs in a general way helps us keep up to date with digital technologies. In fact, the head of our online program comes from that department. Now, how about the UN's MDGs and SDGs? So global scale concerns are part of globalization. Although you may speak of globalization as actually being based on the economic logic, where companies would manufacture where it is least costly, they distribute in a certain way, where they could gain maximum benefits, economics. But the global scale of operations can also create global scale concerns, such as climate change. So, well, we've been involved in all of this. So that in 2020, we were given, just this year, a few months ago, we were pre-COVID, was it COVID already? I think it was COVID. We were given by Times Higher Education a ranking, an overall ranking. So we were together with UP, LaSalle, and University of Asia and the Pacific. And that is because we got ranking in at least 5 areas: clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, responsible consumption and production, and partnership for goals. So you may ask, what did we do to deserve this? So for clean water, Mapua actually produces its own purified water, and we have applied for research funds from the UST, and we were granted it. So we are now involved in the monitoring of dams, DAMS, throughout the country for structural integrity. Also, we have ongoing projects with the Taiwan Ministry of Science together with the OST for the monitoring and remediation of pollutant levels in Laguna de Bay. Now, for affordable and clean energy, we started our carbon footprint reduction program way back in 2010. And last year, we ran a short course, international short course, and we had participants from Taiwan and Europe. This was about renewable energy. Well, there are benefits of being part of a big group of companies. So the Yuchenko Group runs a solar farm in Tarlac, a geothermal plant in Makiling, and a wind farm in Aklan, very near Boracay. You can see it from the station 1, 2, 3, Boracay. If you look up, there's a wind farm in the mainland. So what we did was to do a renewable energy seminar or short course and lectures and then tours in the various power plants with the finale in Aklan and Boracay. So that was quite a successful run of an international short course. For decent work and economic growth, the THE noted our policies against sexual harassment and discrimination and other policies that are for our employees. For responsible consumption and production, we have maintained a contract meticulously for the hauling of our biological and chemical wastes. And we have programs in waste management and sanitation. In Partnership for Goals, we run annual conferences for our partner barangays on the environment. And we also have hosted, organized, and attended international conferences on sustainability. So we think this is an important part of globalization. For ABET accreditation, as I said earlier, this ABET shifted to outcomes-based accreditation in year 2000. And it shifted to accreditation of foreign programs, I think sometime 2005, 2006. Before, they would not accredit programs outside the US. What they would do was just declare substantial equivalence of the programs. But then they went for accreditation, and that suddenly meant that they'd be as strict on foreign programs as they are on US-based programs. So we liked it, that it was outcomes-based. We thought that it was a very robust way of maintaining the quality of the programs. And furthermore, since ABET was the leading light of Washington Accord, and Washington Accord members adhere to a common set of outcomes in engineering and IT, then we thought that we'd get the extra benefit of our students being globally competitive. And in fact, they have become that. No? So we have examples to show that they've used this to advantage in gaining employment in New York, in San Diego, and other parts of the US, as well as when applying for graduate school. So this is globalization, upfront. And outcomes has really become a principle for global agreement on standards. Being convenient, not just convenient, but very robust. Okay. We would be on our third cycle now. And as I mentioned in CS and IT programs, accreditation and its renewal cycles brings or has brought and keeps MAPUA programs up to global standards and proofs them against further advancements in the fields of study. So that's it for ABET. And outcomes-based, well, we had to have at-scale adoption of OBE, and basically, we taught ourselves, although we've had some consultants, but we taught ourselves basically. First, when we were doing accreditation, we had to hit the sites of various universities in the US and see how it is done. And so it's part of our system now. And I'm glad it is so, because outcomes is the basis of regional and global agreements, international accreditation accords, not just Washington Accord, but even the one in Europe, ACE, Europe, that's AECE. That's the accreditation agreement in Europe, also adheres to a set of outcomes. And I don't know whether they have accomplished it yet, but there's supposed to be a unification document between ACE and ABET that will expand the coverage of the entire outcomes-based accreditation system. Then the MRAs, as you know, ASEAN has several MRAs in engineering, nursing, and other professions, no? That will help professionals move across ASEAN countries. They also speak of outcomes. And for example, the ASEAN Engineers Register, AER, or the ASEAN Chartered Engineers Register, ACPER, Professional Engineers Register, their qualifications for entry are about the same as the outcomes of the education system. Meaning to say, outcomes not only bound the various countries together, but it also bound the education and the professionals sector. So the student leaving the school will exhibit certain attainment of certain outcomes, and if they're able to do that, they get accepted into the registry. So napagsama yung academe and the professions. And then it's also the language of international qualifications framework. They call it descriptors. So levels 1 to 8 in our case will have descriptors. And we compare descriptors among the various ASEAN countries to a reference framework. That's how we're able to determine the reference, the equivalency. That's how we reference against one another. And thus far, the Philippines and Malaysia have been able to reference themselves against this framework. And pretty soon, there will be Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand. Within this year, it's expected that they'll be able to reference. And the language here is the language of outcomes. Okay. So this also ties in with the principles of lifelong learning. It's not just learning to learn throughout your life, but being able to navigate the qualifications framework of a country by means of definition of outcomes. And what accompanies this is a credit transfer system and competency-based certifications. Okay. Now, outcomes-based education gives the school the vehicle to link to global standards in education and the professions. It proves it against isolation from the geographical world, and ultimately the world of work and the world of the future. Because the world of work would also be expressed or should be expressed in terms of outcomes, and that would be part of the evolution of all these international agreements. The outcomes themselves are subject to continuous quality improvement. So as the world of work changes, so should the outcomes change. We're big believers in outcomes-based education. Now, a lofty vision. Actually, I hope you don't think that we're too full of ourselves. But our vision states that we want to be a global center of excellence and to be among the best universities in the world. We thought that this was not just a pie in the sky statement, because there are metrics, imperfect though they may be in the eyes of some, in order to determine the degree of attainment. And I refer to nothing other than the world ranking of universities or Asia ranking of universities. This is a way to, to keep us global and digital, because even the digital aspect is measured in these rankings. How connected are you? How much bandwidth per student, and so on and so forth. Sa global, di ba, they ask what your peers think about you, what the peers in other shores think about you. So just the effort or the effort alone brought internal changes to our school to make it confident in advancing towards, if not indeed helping invent the future. So yeah. So we got QS in 2017, and we had to do a number of things. Among them, develop the capability for research, and also to internationalize the campus. So we try to internationalize our research little by little. We got partners in our neighbor Taiwan, and that helped us a lot. In fact, there was a big faculty development component to it, but it was not one way, because we were also helping them with their research, and we were helping them publish the papers that came out of the research. And this grew and grew, and we have many partners in Taiwan as of now. But there's nothing like that to really raise the level of research that one does, and to know what is happening around the world. The Chung Yuan University in Taiwan has a world-class membrane center, and a number of our faculty members got to learn a lot from studying in this membrane center, and we had hoped that we're hoping that we're able to do more along that line for water systems, medical applications, and so on. And then we got partners from other countries as well, in countries as far-flung as Sweden and so on, no? And some Eastern European countries. So we have research work going on right now with other countries, also Korea and Japan. We're doing some work on laser with the Osaka University. So it increased our research capability. Research-capable faculty grew in numbers. And I think in the year 2015, there was an exponential rise in Scopus research papers. And it was a major factor in our QS ranking. And if we are able to maintain our current level of production, more than 300 last year, and more than 200 the year before that. And now, despite COVID, we have 121 papers, if I'm not mistaken, as of 2 weeks ago, already Scopus indexed. We should, and we are aiming for THC ranking, knock on wood, in a few years. So just simply working at the frontiers of knowledge keeps a school current and aware of where the future may lie. So doing research is future proofing, if not future shaping. Okay, in education, we have faculty, student and exchange, visiting professors, international plant visits, as many schools do. International OJT in engineering, international student research internships. This one we're proud of, that we're able to send undergraduates to do research in other universities as part of their internship. And our OJT also for our engineering students, we have quite a number of partners in international OJT. And international plant visits, we have thousands now of students who have undergone plant visits. Where before, a mechanical engineering student would expect only to be able to go to the Tabangao refinery of Shell as part of his plant visit, or a power plant in Rockwell. Now you can go, students go abroad to take a look at manufacturing and other kinds of installations abroad. So this helps us keep our ears on the ground about schools and work in other countries, and helps us keep pace with global trends. Now, I think this is the last item in going towards a global and digital future. So, as I mentioned earlier, we started with subscription to technical journals, and sometimes we buy the CDs themselves. So we have CDs of IEEE, the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, in our library. Of course, maybe people no longer prefer to go over that, having the internet and all. And early on, we had set aside a corner of the library for web browsing, for assignments of our students. And then we hit MIT OpenCourseware, OCW, and actually got to meet the head of MIT OCW, because he was also he has also a master's in naval architecture like me. So got to ask a few questions, and got to understand what it was all about. So MIT President Chuck Vest at that time said that the only way that you could actually make use of the internet in an expansive way for the benefit of many people would be to offer your content for free. And he put, what do you call it? He walked the talk. So they actually came up with OCW, and it's still available if you want to browse. All their lessons, all their problem sets, all the notes, class notes, are posted in MIT OCW. But they are just primitive, if I may say so, in a rather fundamental way, no embellishments. But you can use that as a big resource, especially for the higher courses. Then we had Khan Academy at that time, and we built curated content repositories. So we had some people assigned to curate and then build repositories of educational materials. And then in the second decade, although LMSs were available already in the first decade, we went for open source LMSs, Moodle, Canvas, and Edmodo. So the faculty members all were experimenting with various LMS, and we just let them be. That we didn't say, okay, everybody go to Moodle or Canvas or what, but just experimentation. And actually we kept track how many of them are actually conversant with LMS, no? And well, the percentages were growing and growing, but basically it was on the initiative of faculty until we provided them some training in Moodle, and the numbers grew. But before it could hit 100, we thought that we wanted more functionality. So we subscribed to Blackboard, both the asynchronous and synchronous mode. So whereas before we only had asynchronous in Moodle, we went for the synchronous mode in Blackboard as well. And now you can have Zoom as your synchronous mode. But so we also had add-on softwares to Blackboard. One to prevent cheating during exam, one to make more beautiful video clips or lectures. So one to for the dean to be able to monitor how it is going with the individual faculty members, what are the data that are being collected with some analytics. So you can do this to your LMS. And well, we grew more and more, I guess, comfortable with an LMS, but we preferred a blended learning mode because we recognize a lot of advantages in face-to-face. Some features are superior in face-to-face rather than online, and vice versa. So in online, you may want to mention you're able to self-pace, rewind, play again, rewind, and so on and so forth. Your lecture, get instant feedback when a student takes his time, or no, sorry, rather when he goes for an assessment, he can add feedback on his on the results of his exam. And now you can pair that with the feature in outcomes-based education of multiple attempts. You know, the student can learn by attempts in assessment because there is instant feedback and gamification. Actually, active learning is an old philosophy, and what goes well with online learning is active learning. No, until AI comes in, then you can also adapt, or you can use adaptive learning. But so we got Blackboard in 2018 only, so we've been at it for 2 years. One of our there are dramatic applications of this, but never mind the drama actually. But what is good would be, you know, in the day-to-day use of the learning management software. But just to say it, we have what we call a digital day. Whenever classes are suspended, ASEAN Summit, procession, Quiapo procession, the flooding in front of Manila City Hall, political rallies. Then we tell everybody to stay home, including faculty members, and do classes online in the same schedule as if they were face-to-face classes. So we found out that in prime time, 10:30 to 12, there were 75 classes simultaneously scheduled, maybe around 4,000 students in those 75 classes. We were able to deliver 75 synchronous lectures, massive simultaneous lectures. So that's what the power of synchronous is, no? But that was just for convenience, actually. I don't know if you can do that with Zoom. I don't know yet. But we deployed our Blackboard Collaborate that way. We also have Digital Rush. If you don't want to battle the rush hour traffic, you can opt for a digital section in the morning or in the evening. So we also instituted that feature. So we think that there could be more enriched educational experience in some ways using online. Certainly, if you have huge databases of e-learning materials, if that happened in my day as a college student, I would probably be like a kid in a candy store where, you know, I'll have unlimited access to all these educational materials. I don't have to wait for my book in the library, sometimes for several days and so on. Also, by integrating micro-credentials on top of my school diploma, I can come out of school with a certificate from a MOOC provider, so that enhances my employability. That might be hard to achieve with simply face-to-face. But you can actually, if you wanted to. You don't have to be online to do this, but it's much more convenient with online. Now, one thing we did not want to mix was the tool and the substance. So we still look upon online education as merely a tool. If it did not help us in any way to attain the learning outcomes or the program outcomes that we desire, then we can throw it away. Because what is more important is the learning, the attainment of the learning and program outcomes. So although it is really very convenient and beautiful in a way, we don't get enamored with the tool. So that is how we look upon that. Okay, steerings of the future. I just saw this morning an email of a school offering a course on future thinking. Where you'll have to consider the global geopolitics, climate change, emerging technologies, client behavior, and of course the effect of COVID-19 as you look towards the future. Might be a good course to enroll in. So future thinking. That would be the very big view of looking towards the future. In the National Academy of Science and Technology, we are now doing technology foresighting, trying to predict where technological development might go until 2050. So it's 2020 to 2050. We'll be drafting a strategic plan for that, but we have to first have a technology foresighting exercise. So looking into the future is really exciting, but sometimes when it gets too far, the uncertainties multiply, no? But I think just looking at what may be already evident now, or steerings, the first steerings of the future, then there are certain things that we can already see. First, new school models are being developed. And basically, this is along the lines of online education. But some people are talking about no more degrees. Degrees are irrelevant. You just need to get credentials for specific competencies. Well, I don't know what you think about that, but I think the truth will lie in between, because I would think that the organization of knowledge, for example, into engineering, as engineering fields, mechanical, electrical, electronics, there's still a lot of things to be said about that. Although there could be merging, like electronics and mechanical may merge in certain areas, but still, I think the fields can still legitimately stand on their own. So when you organize chunks of knowledge, that might still stand. But they may be improved. For example, in laddering up from technician to technology to professional engineer, I think that there may be a way to do this a lot better than it is being done now. And to break it up into smaller modules so you can put together the modules in a more optimal way. But I don't know. Far future maybe, but in the foreseeable future, I don't think that might that will hold water, no. Because what we're gonna have to do is to reorganize all these chunks of knowledge, reorganize them in various ways. For the professions, that might be more difficult to do, because there's a logic to it, why a course is a prerequisite to another course and so on. why it could be a core requisite, then we have to reorganize all of that, no? And that will really take some doing. But then we should not stop thinking about that, how the current organization of degrees of knowledge into degrees could be further improved, no? But mainly the change is not in the content itself, but in the method of or the mode of delivery at the moment. These are the steerings of the future. Then there will be new educational technologies. Artificial intelligence and adaptive learning can be employed. What it means is if you're studying algebra, for example, thousands of points may be defined where there will be an assessment, and the path through which a learner will go through the material can be adjusted from time to time depending upon how he performs at the various levels of assessment, at the various points of assessment. No? In fact, there are already rudimentary products along this line. The Chinese are experimenting with this as well. AI in education. No? There may be other experiments that I may not be aware of, but that is what I know. Adaptive learning and artificial intelligence. And that could lead to personalized instruction, which may be the penultimate goal of that, no? That you may be able to tailor instruction to specific learners. And then there's augmented reality, virtual reality. Certainly, there are also products now, but maybe rather still expensive and not expansive. In training, there are, I think, more products of AR, VR. Quantum Internet. The superiority of quantum internet has been proven over the fastest computer that we have now, where it might take a quantum computer only 20 minutes to do a task. It might take thousands of years for the fastest computer now to be able to do the task. And that was demonstrated last year. No? That's how fast quantum computing is going to be. So if something comes to light within the next 30 years, can you imagine what that might do to education? Okay. And then on the future of work, everybody says Industrial Revolution 4.0. What is it really? I said in the first part of this talk that Industry 1.0 is steam engine. Industry 2.0 is electricity. Industry 3.0 is computers. And that will go with standalone robots. So the computers changed the workplace. And then we didn't have to wait for another century for another industrial revolution to occur. And what are people saying to be the basic technology that enables Industrial Revolution 4.0? What I would believe is internet. It's the ability of machines now, or computers, and machines as computers, to talk to one another. And that has changed the industrial processes, no? If machines could talk with one another. One machine controlling another machine in another part of the world, and so on. And the possibilities are limitless. You can have, this is now, when you hear of Internet of Things, massive cyber physical systems. And this is where experimentation in the University of California, Berkeley is going on right now. They're building massive cyber physical systems. So that cyber would be internet, cyberspace, and physical would be machines. So this is massive systems involving machines and or computers, no? Because machines now are computers, machines and the internet. So data is a result of computers and computers talking one another. We amass more data than we could ever know what to do with. And that's why we have data science, data analytics, so much data being generated every second. So they say that this is now the age of data, and that may be so. But data in itself is not Industry Revolution 4.0. It's the ability of machines to talk to one another. So with AI is enabled by huge masses of data. That's how our AI chips learn, through massive amounts of data. They learn, that's how they learn. Okay, so there's a steering already of this future, and our schools will have to adapt to this, I guess gradually, because these things also come gradually to our country. Now, one more thing is biology as the science of the 21st century. The science of the 18th century was chemistry, when all research focused on chemistry, and there was an industry around chemistry. So I think I said earlier, the Germans were ahead of everyone else. But by the 1930s, who's that guy? The guy who said vitamin C is the cure for colds. He said that everything that is knowable about chemistry is already known. So that was the end of chemistry. We knew everything about chemistry in the 1930s. But that doesn't mean that chemistry is dead, because chemistry is applied when we make chemical switches for our very small circuitry. And there are a lot of other applications of chemistry, but not in the fundamental science itself. Now, the science of the 20th century, as you may have guessed, is physics. Without knowledge of physics, we don't have the transistor, we don't have computers, the electronic computers as we have them now. There are other areas from the very small, knowing about the quantum mechanics, to the very large, the astrophysics, how black holes, Stephen Hawking's black holes are formed, and so on and so forth. So we gained a lot of knowledge in physics in the 20th century. Yet some scientific questions remain. What is dark matter? Nobody knows yet what dark matter is. But in biology, there are also basic questions that have to be answered. How does the central nervous system work? How is it that a single fertilized egg, how does it develop into a full organism? Nobody has the answers for these questions yet. But we're learning more and more about biology, and many scientists declare it to be the science of the 21st century. That's why MIT hired Dr. Susan Hockfield out of Yale for a time to be the president of MIT, because they were emphasizing on biology, on neuroscience, neurosciences, and so on. So I did a research for NAST, and I finished it in April. What I found out was there was the enrollment in biology in our undergraduate programs is an order of magnitude bigger than enrollment in physics and chemistry. And I thought that, why? What is this? What's happening? So a lot of them, I think, is related to the medical and allied fields. No, if you wanted to go into medicine ultimately, then you may want to take biology. Although you can take other fields as well, but biology would be a good foundation for medicine. But I think we could parlay that into something good for our country. We can develop the biology programs of our schools and vertically articulate them into master's and PhD, then we could get something going in the years to come. Meanwhile, we have our own small attempt here, it's still alive. We have a biological engineering program here in Mapua. So, well, I believe that in this happening, that biology, there'll be leaps and bounds of acquisition of knowledge in the field of biology. So I think that is all I have. Spoken too much. Maraming salamat po. Thank you. And I'm ready for questions now. And I'll stop sharing. Are you still there? Ang haba.
Yes, we are here, and yes, that was a lot to take in. It's just good. It's a Monday morning, and I suppose everyone is just, really ready, to take in a lot of your ideas. Everything very valuable, seriously. And what you just said was true. No, I suppose they'll keep on watching this video after we've concluded this and uploaded this in our site, so that they can better. What's the term for that? Better understand, better reflect on all of these ideas you've shared. A lot of school presidents are actually with us now. I saw that they're watching. I saw Father Jun Viray, I saw Father Karel, I saw John Yang,
Okay.
I saw Brother Armin. Okay, so they're all listening to you. But this, of course, are higher education institution presidents. But a lot of our participants this morning are from basic education institutions.
Oh,
Yes, so Dr.
sorry, I took up too much time.
We'd like to ask you about that now, because future proofing, as what you have explained, is synonymous to actually proofing against obsolescence, right?
Yes.
Isolation and being irrelevant. So if you're a basic ed institution, what should you do at this time? Probably three non-negotiables that you'll have to do 2020-21 when the school year opens, so that you can actually be ready for the future. Even if it's something that was like by force of circumstance, you just have to embrace at this time.
Okay. One thing is, I think we should start exposing our students very early on. Forgive my bias, no, to science. Give them simple implements, because well, I've read a study that a child actually could develop his interest in certain areas as early as that age. Probably some people will know more about this than I do, but that's one thing. Start early, exposing them to to as many fields as we can. The other thing is fundamentals, especially when you get to high school, no? Because consider this, the 70s when knowledge exploded and a lot of knowledge in various fields was growing. I guess the response was to specialize. But then as the pace of knowledge acquisition grew even faster, suddenly it didn't make sense, because you cannot keep pace by specializing. So it goes back to fundamentals. If a student knows fundamentals, then when he comes out of the school system, then he can go to various other fields because he has the fundamentals and learn the specialization later on. So I think that's basic. That's what I'd have. That's basic non-negotiables.
I was about to, I'm supposed to say good answer, and I completely agree. Another thing that I'd like to ask, though, which is what you were saying a while ago, that blended learning is the preferred mode, right? Is that something that out of over time, that's something that you have made as a conclusion? Because where the schools are at this time, right? Because of the pandemic, they'll have to embrace either online or distance modular or all of these other delivery modes, which are non-face-to-face. And we know that there are some constraints here. A while ago, you were saying, right, that even online actually is superior in some ways, but inferior in some ways to face-to-face. So given that that is the constraint, how can basic ed schools again respond to having to have delivery modes that are non-face-to-face at this time?
Yeah. Well, there are a number of issues. Number one is, of course, although I wouldn't consider that it's urgent, but maybe not important as some other things, is connectivity. So how do we provide connectivity? If you had the will, you can even divert resources. I think this country has the resources to give greater bandwidth to its citizens, including the learners. No? If we really put our mind to it, we can get more bandwidth. No? To government, to the private sector, through the telcos. Because that's a resource problem, that's a physical resource problem. The solution, the solution it's not complex, I think, but it will take some doing. But the more, I guess, the more important thing would be teaching ourselves how to make best use of online teaching and learning. The teacher, how competent will they be to use this mode of delivery? Because it can really happen that if you don't put your mind to it in a deep way, the students may end up not learning much from the teacher if the instruction is not designed properly. So instructional design. So here we want everybody to go through a course in instructional design. We're sending some people to study instructional design, get a credential on instructional design. For, even with the bandwidth and everything, you're not assured of a good system unless the methodology is used very well, no? I mean, the instructional methodology. So how do we do that? A massive training program in instructional design. Well, massive. Then you can have online as a mode to deliver that kind of training.
Yeah, but you said blended is your preferred mode, right? So
Yeah.
definitely it's not full online. Definitely some days of the week there'll be face-to-face when this will be allowed.
Yes. And we use blended in conjunction with what is known as a flipped classroom, which I think people would know, no? So we flip the classroom, and this is a cultural thing, huh? Because, like when I was studying, it was cramming towards the quizzes, everybody crams. But now you have to invert that. And, instead of listening to the teacher in the old mode, no, face-to-face, then you'll just read after the class. You'll try to understand what he said after the class. Dito, you read before the class. And the class is not used for lecture. It is used for clarifying. It is used for class discussion, and so on. So can you imagine the shift? It's a cultural shift among learners in the Philippines.
The attitude of teachers towards that.
Yeah. But then can you imagine also the power of that? Yes. That, they studied, they thought about it beforehand and discussed later on in class. But then you have to have that face-to-face. You have to have that face-to-face. Nothing with beat that, You may have a chat room, you may have, you may have a Zoom meeting there to do this, but face-to-face, I think, would be superior for that part of the flipped learning process.
We'll allow you to rest for a few minutes because there's a lot of thank yous here. Okay, thank you, Dr. Vea. That was indeed a lot to take in. So they're asking if PAC will record and upload. Yes, we will. So you can watch it several times and you can have all your teachers watch this webinar. And we're very fortunate that you agreed to this. But they're also asking for your slides. Can we have your slides? And,
sure. I'll email to you.
Yes, and then we'll upload this as well. So, it will really take a lot of thinking on our part, for teachers, especially for school heads. The states of the future I really like. I even took a picture of those slides. and try to design the next PhilEd conference along along these topics. But there's one thing I heard about accreditation that you talked about, and you said that to future-proof the school, accreditation is also a strategy, right? It's something that keeps you on your toes.
Of course.
But the data of accreditation in the Philippines is not very good. I mean, we only have a handful of schools accredited across levels, across accrediting agencies. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, our neighbor in Davao, I think, I don't know, he may be here, but they actually, that was when they started on the accreditation process. I think that's what spurred the, according to them, the VPAA there. That's what spurred a movement towards quality. And you have to have a framework, no? You have to have a framework. And the criteria, well, that's been a distillation of what educators like us would have experienced over the years, no? You may want to append it in certain ways, but basically they're already there. They're already there. Even ABET did not append their inputs-based accreditation of the past. They just added the criteria of outcomes, and they added the student outcomes. They added that. And so they did not append. Dinagdag lang yun. And it's a good framework. And for any school, we are desiring to embark along that road, not just of quality, but I guess being up to date all the time. That is a very concrete, doable way, to make that happen. So I am for accreditation, but I have also my ideas about it, how it can be improved.
Okay. I saw the comment of Father John Yang here. Thank you, Dr. Vea. Many things to consider for the future. Thank you for this valuable webinar and let's have talks about education, the future tense, that came from Maria Villanueva. So a lot of thank yous, and really, Dr. Vea, we are very, very privileged that you were the one who kicked off LIDER for PAC. First time we're doing an educational leadership series. So we'd like to thank you, and we'd like to say that we see in you leadership, innovation, and dynamism.
Thank you. Welcome.
So with that, we'd like to close this webinar. I know that you spoke for more than 45 minutes.
I told you 30 minutes last night.
Yes, but we're really very privileged that we had an engineer, a scientist, a researcher, an environmentalist, an academician, a chief executive, a thought leader, and an education advocate rolled into one in this morning's LIDER. We'd like to see you tomorrow when we feature back-to-back Sister Marisa Viri to talk about standards and Father John Yang to talk about fiscal discipline in the time of COVID-19.
Okay.
Thank you once again, Dr. Vea.
You're welcome.
At maraming salamat po sa lahat ng nanood at kasama natin ngayong umaga. We have promised you the video, and Dr. Vea promised you the slides. Thank you and good morning. Salamat!